In war, there are weapons that kill, and there are weapons that create fear before they even strike. Not because of how powerful they are, but because of what they do to the human mind. Some were so terrifying that soldiers didn't run toward the enemy. They ran from what they couldn't see. They heard things, felt things, and sometimes they understood what was happening only when it was already too late. Because in war, fear can arrive before the weapon does. And today, I'm going to show you 5 of the most terrifying weapons ever used in war. 5. Flamethrower. The flamethrower was one of the most feared weapons introduced in modern warfare. It was designed to project a stream of burning fuel over a distance, using pressurized tanks carried by a soldier. Instead of bullets, it used fire. The idea behind it was simple. During World War I, much of the fighting happened in trenches and fortified positions. Enemies were often hidden, protected, and difficult to reach. Traditional weapons weren't always effective in these tight spaces, so the flamethrower was created to solve that problem. It could force enemies out of cover, or eliminate them without direct line of sight. One of the first large-scale uses of flamethrowers happened in 1915 during the First World War by German forces. They used it against French trenches near Verdun. In these situations, the weapon was especially effective. Soldiers inside trenches or bunkers had very limited escape routes. When flames were projected into these confined spaces, there was often nowhere to run. Beyond the physical damage, the psychological effect was immediate. The sight of fire advancing toward you, the heat, the smoke, it created panic. Many soldiers would abandon their positions before the flames even reached them. Because unlike gunfire, this wasn't something you could hide from easily. And that's what made it so terrifying. But even this was not the worst thing soldiers would face. 4. Mustard gas. Mustard gas was one of the most feared chemical weapons used in war. Despite the name, it wasn't exactly a gas. It was a toxic chemical agent that could exist as a vapor, or settle on surfaces like an oily liquid. What made it especially dangerous was how it attacked the human body. It didn't kill instantly. At first, soldiers often didn't even realize they had been exposed. There was sometimes a faint smell, similar to garlic or mustard, but the real effects came later. Hours after exposure, the symptoms would begin. The skin would start to burn, blisters would form, eyes would swell shut, and inside the body, slight pause. The lungs would slowly fill with fluid. Breathing became painful, then difficult, then almost impossible. The idea behind mustard gas was not just to kill, it was to incapacitate, to overwhelm enemy forces with injured soldiers who needed care, and to create fear across entire battlefields. It was first used on a large scale in July 1917 during the First World War, near the city of Ypres in Belgium. German forces launched artillery shells filled with mustard gas toward Allied positions. At first, nothing seemed unusual. There was no immediate explosion, no obvious danger, but hours later, thousands of soldiers began to suffer the effects. Many had already removed their protective gear, not realizing they had been exposed. What made mustard gas even more dangerous was its persistence. It could remain active in the environment for days, sometimes weeks, contaminating trenches, equipment, even the ground itself. This meant soldiers could be exposed long after the initial attack. By the end of the war, over 1 million soldiers had been affected by chemical weapons like mustard gas, and tens of thousands died slowly But even this was not the most destructive form of warfare yet. Imagine the sky suddenly glowing, not from sunlight, but from fire falling. You hear the whistling first, then impact. But instead of a single explosion, the ground bursts into liquid flames. And it doesn't go out. It spreads. It sticks. It follows you. Napalm wasn't just another bomb. It was designed to turn fuel into something thicker, heavier, almost like burning glue. When it hit the ground, it didn't just ignite. It clung to whatever it touched. Buildings, trees, the ground, people. And that changed everything. In earlier wars, fire burned fast. You could escape it, outrun it, survive if you were quick. Napalm removed that chance, because this fire didn't behave like normal fire. It kept burning for longer, at extreme temperatures, and in confined areas, streets, bunkers, villages. It consumed the oxygen itself. The air got thinner, hotter, harder to breathe. People weren't just running from flames. They were running from the air disappearing around them. And then came the panic. Not just fear of burning, but the realization that the fire wouldn't let go. That even if you escaped the initial blast, the flames could still be on you, still spreading, still burning. Napalm was used extensively in conflicts like World War II, and later, even more devastatingly, in the Vietnam War. Not just to destroy targets, but to clear entire areas, because once it hit, nothing remained untouched. And that's what made it different. This wasn't just a weapon that killed. It was a weapon that turned entire environments into fire. But even that was not the most terrifying part of modern warfare. The V-2 rocket was unlike anything the world had ever seen. No wings, no pilot, no warning. It didn't fly like a plane. It didn't fall like a bomb. It rose straight into the sky, disappeared into the edge of space, and then came down faster than the speed of sound. You would never hear it coming. By the time you realized something was wrong, it had already hit. The V-2 was the first long-range guided ballistic missile in history, developed by Nazi Germany during the final stages of World War II. It was built as a weapon of retaliation, a vengeance weapon launched from hidden mobile platforms. It could strike cities hundreds of kilometers away. London, Antwerp, entire urban areas became targets. But what made the V-2 truly terrifying was not just its power, it was its silence. Unlike traditional bombing raids, there were no sirens, no engines in the sky, no time to run. The explosion came first. The sound came after. And by then, it was already too late. Each rocket carried nearly 1 ton of explosives. When it hit, it didn't just destroy buildings. It carved craters into the ground, threw debris hundreds of meters into the air, and collapsed entire streets in seconds. But even that wasn't what made it revolutionary. The V-2 left the atmosphere. For a brief moment, it crossed into space, before falling back toward Earth in a ballistic arc. It became the first human-made object to reach that height. A weapon that touched space only to return as destruction. And there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Anti-aircraft guns were useless. Fighter planes couldn't intercept it. It moved too fast, too high, too late. More than 3,000 V-2 rockets were launched during the war. Thousands of civilians were killed. But even that number hides something darker. Because more people died building the V-2 than from the attacks themselves. Forced laborers, prisoners, worked in brutal conditions inside underground factories. Many never left alive. The weapon that represented the future was built on suffering. And in the end, it didn't change the outcome of the war. Germany was already losing. The V2 couldn't stop that. But it proved something else. That war had entered a new era, because after the war, both the United States and the Soviet Union took this technology and pushed it even further. What began as a weapon became the foundation of rockets that would reach orbit, and eventually, the moon. The same idea, two completely different paths. One for destruction, one for exploration. But in 1944, none of that mattered to the people on the ground. For them, there was no warning, no defense, only impact. And the realization that war had just become something far more advanced and far more terrifying. For the first time in history, humans unleashed the power of the atom. And in that moment, the most destructive weapon ever created was born. The story began decades earlier, with the discovery of a strange element, uranium. Scientists like Marie Curie revealed that atoms could release energy. But in the 1930s, everything changed. Nuclear fission, the splitting of an atom's nucleus, unlocked a force unlike anything the world had ever seen. As war consumed Europe, scientists fled Nazi control. Among them, Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard warned the United States. If Nazi Germany built this weapon first, it could mean the end of everything. The response was the most secret project in history, the Manhattan Project. Over 100,000 people working in total secrecy with one goal: build the bomb before the enemy. At its center stood J. Robert Oppenheimer. Then came the moment that changed everything. The Trinity test. 5:29 a.m. A flash brighter than the sun lit up the desert sky. The explosion reached over 20,000 tons of TNT. Oppenheimer later recalled, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." Weeks later, two bombs would fall on Japan, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Hundreds of thousands died, and the world entered a new era, the nuclear age. An age where humanity gained the power to destroy itself. If this video made you see history differently, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next stories that shaped our world. And tell me in the comments, do you think the atomic bomb was necessary to end the war, or did it go too far?